Good morning, lovely listeners of the WOFB. Cameron here, your host with the mostest. Oh my gosh, you guys, what an exciting week. I'm on the 22nd floor here in downtown New York of Times Square doing this recording today because we never stop. It does not matter, just like in life, just like in business, no matter where you are, you got to keep it going, right? I'm so excited today. This podcast is being recorded, like I said, in New York. However, I am going to be joined by the co-founder of the WOFB, Rachel Berlin, which we have not heard yet from Rachel Berlin on this podcast. So I am so honored. As you all know, this podcast is brought to you by WOFB and sponsored by my company, Cameo Studio Designs and Latacrete, which we love, which we will jump into more today. However, you guys, Rachel Berlin, if you are not following her or you know anything about her, you are missing out on a special gift of a person in your life. So she is a senior trainer at Broadloom. Like I said, she is the co-founder of the WOFB. And I just found this out and I'm so interested to dive deeper in with Rachel, but she has a degree in interior design. So I'm going to be super excited to learn more about her squeaky wheel, self-proclaimed name of what all of that means. So without further ado, hello, Miss Rachel.
Hey, how are you, Cam?
Oh my gosh, I am so good. The scene tells it all, but you know me, I'm everywhere.
I love seeing that beautiful skyline behind you. I'm here in my Wisconsin kitchen where that's where I do all my work, but you're on the spot in all these different areas. You're just a jet setter. I love seeing that about you. You're always on the go.
Yes, ma'am. Oh my gosh, Rachel. I am so excited. I think that it is so important for people to know. We always hear about Michelle Winters, founder this, founder that, but you are like our little you're like our secret, all right? You are our secret weapon of the WOFB. So I am so glad to proclaim and give you accolades of who you are, what you're doing in the community. So tell me, your current career right now at Broadloom, what's going on there? Where are you in life?
Yeah, so I feel like I kind of snuck out of the in the showroom position of being in the flooring industry, but I work now for Broadloom, which I get this coast to coast view of what's going on in the industry. So being an account manager for retailers all over the United States, I have a very, very, I think, acute view of what's going on here, there, everywhere. And it gives me an interesting perspective. But in my role, I work kind of one-on-one with owners, managers, even their sales teams to kind of just understand what's going on in the business, but then help them be their best and make sure they have all their tools, resources, of course, technology, which is what Broadloom is known for. And, just kind of, it's a little bit of coaching, but it's a lot of just, really helping them work through their day-to-day and what I can do to make them more successful.
Speaking of success, maybe this podcast is going to be so successful, especially, do I look like I'm kind of sitting here naked?
I think it's
the
shoulder, yeah.
Angle. I swear I'm not doing this podcast naked for everyone. But oh my God, would we not be so famous? Anyway, side note, I am clothed.
I was going to say you look like an angel.
Oh, yeah, right? Which we all know that is not the case. So, Rachel, I love that, where you are, in this corporate space, but where did your career actually begin? I know you didn't start in Broadloom.
No. So way back, 18 years ago, I started in the flooring industry in the retail space. But before that, right out of high school, I went to school for interior design in Wisconsin. I got my associate's degree. That that's what I wanted to do since I was like in 6th grade. And that was kind of around the time when HGTV was like just getting started and all those shows and everything. And I was like, that's what I want to do. So I went to college, got my degree, started in a company that wasn't so great. You learn things along the way where you don't belong necessarily. And then I ended up at a flooring retailer, and I spent my first 10 years there in a sales and design position, which I would have never said that I would have gone into flooring, because that was not my favorite part of interior design school whatsoever. But that's where I ended up. And it was actually for a Carpet One store, and they have amazing training. They did a really great job of just onboarding and everything that way. So like I said, I started my first 10 years there, just, doing sales and design. And then I made a leap to a different company, and I was there my last 7 years. And in that position, I helped to grow that company from, I believe it was like starting out when I started around 3 million. And I think when I left, it was around 8. So that was kind of a fun.
Look at you.
It's not me. It's just, it's having a great team around you. And but I got to be a sales manager there for the first time ever, which is not for the faint of heart. I did it. I never did it before. It was definitely like trial by fire, and just learned along the way. That's probably a lot of the early parts of WOFB that you might see me like when I first started. That was, we've been around for 5 years. So if you kind of think of that transition back, it's, I started asking a lot of the questions on the other Facebook groups, which were very helpful. And there was a lot of people in there, and there was a lot of, great opinions. But then Michelle approached me, and she's like, hey, I'm going to start this group. And I've been kind of like watching and listening to your questions and your comments and things on Facebook. And would you want to co-facilitate this group with me? And I was like, yes. I don't know what that means, but yes, let's do it.
Incredible. So that is then how the WOFB and you evolved together, was essentially just a conversation of, hey, you have these qualities. I see this within you, at which Michelle is very good at doing, hence why we have this podcast as well. So from that time, 5 years ago, then your role with the WOFB, tell me more about that.
Yeah, I would say that I'm not like full-time in it as much as Michelle is, which I love her for that. Like she does a lot of the marketing and a lot of the background stuff. But I always have my eyes and ears open in that group, and I'm always kind of keeping an eye on the topics at hand. So my role there is really, I like to say, kind of connector, the people connector. There's a lot of great women that kind of, you can tell they're on the outsides or the outskirts of the group, and then they'll speak up once in a while. And I love that. Like, it's kind of like brings out those questions in people and allows them to just have a nice safe place for people to ask questions. And I think that's just so important, to feel safe in your environment, no matter where you're at. And I know that's not always the case. And it wasn't, I don't think, before this group existed. So that's what I love, is just the connection part of each of the members. And I feel, and this is kind of, maybe you would agree with this, but I actually feel like I can talk to certain people in the group more than I could like with some of my best friends, because you guys know more about what I have going on in our industry more than they do.
Absolutely. And, I think that that's super important as far as just like Facebook groups. There's so much of that goes on that I feel, I've been coined before of saying, oh man, in this group, I'm the most hated woman in this Facebook group through the tile industry or that. And it's so easy for people to sit behind a screen and type or say anything without emotion, sympathy, or empathy, at least in my experience. And so to have a space like this, I don't really comment on a whole lot of groups, and it's exactly of why it is that you're speaking, because I feel threatened most of the time, and I feel very much so attacked because of the position that I'm in, but not at the WOFB, ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
So if you are looking for a Facebook group or looking to be a part of a group, check out womenflooring.com. Here we will embrace you with all of your comments and thoughts, as long as you're not nasty, right?
Right. Yes, absolutely. And it is a private group for women only. So like I think that's important to note. And it's not that we have anything, no offense to any men at all. We do have a public page as well that you can support, watch, listen, comment, all the things on that public page. But the private page is women only, and we like it that way. And we did put that out there at one point in time to the group members and said, you know what? Do you want this? And the women said, we want it private. So we kept it that way.
Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. We wanted it private. So, with all of that too, it's really important, I think, to just cast that definition of, it's just an all women's group, and that's it. It's, we love our allies. We love the men that are in our industry. It just 100%. Is a space for people to be able to release and to feel safe and to let go of things maybe that are bottled up that they want to say. And maybe they're too scared to talk about it in already a male dominated industry. So thank you so much for bringing up that point. The other thing is too, is for us this season of the podcast, season 2 is all about the hammer or the honey approach. Can you talk about a time that you could maybe navigate through, and it could be any time of your career, but when you had to use a hammer versus honey approach?
Yeah, I think in my sales manager role, which I really hated that name, but I like to say sales coach more than sales manager. In that role, I definitely had to figure out the ways to use hammer and honey. Like there were times where I did it totally wrong and I just wanted everybody to like me. Like I think that was the beginning stages. I was like, I just want everybody to like me and I want everything to be like, peaches and roses and sunshine, which, that's a great thought, but it isn't going to be that way. So what I learned was setting expectations and being clear was way more important than just everybody liking me. So I had to change my mentality. But, when things don't go the way that they should, and you have to actually sit somebody down and have that hard conversation, I would call it hammer, but I don't think I would say it was as hammer as it could have been. I would say it was being honest and being clear, which to me is more kind than not being clear. So I think those pieces, although it probably caused some tension, and I don't like conflict. I mean, that is something that I'm not conflict averse, but it makes me uncomfortable to have those hard conversations. So I think the hammer part being this is what happened. This is what we talked about, and this is what we have to do moving forward. And I just had to stop and just let that be the thing that I said, and then let that person, talk. It was hard for me to have those hard conversations. And it happened a couple times that I, just had to be in the room where there was we had to have the, here's what we were having to do next conversation based on, the lack of follow through or whatever it might have been. So that was hard.
Yeah. And it can be, very difficult, at least for some. I always come with the hammer. So sometimes it's harder for me to be that honey, but I can totally empathize with what you're saying. I would much rather be able to ease into a conversation, not dial into conflict, but the roles that you and I have, you're more sales, talking to people, whereas I'm in the field dealing with a lot of these installers. So the honey doesn't work for me all the time.
No, I think your role is much different. I
It
respect your
can
role
be.
very much.
Girl, you as well, though. So you talk about I don't remember if it was in a conversation that you and I had or I read it about you, but tell me about this self-proclaimed title, the squeaky wheel.
So that probably goes back more to like the early days of what people maybe started noticing. I mean, what I noticed about myself, but also what people noticed about me when I first like got into this managerial role. And also just when I was discovering that I could reach out to this community of flooring retailers that kind of, they're not competition, but they're in your area or they're in the United States and they're probably dealing with similar things. I just was a question asker. And I guess like that's where I say like the squeaky wheel, because I would ask the question that I felt other people were probably wondering about anyways. I'm like, if I'm wondering this, somebody else has to also be wondering it. So I'm just
Oh,
going
that's
to
good.
ask. So I just, I didn't have fear in that area of asking the question. I didn't really care if anybody thought whatever of me based on the questions that I was asking. But because I was curious, it helped me to gain a lot of insight from outside perspectives, and it helped to guide me in the right direction. So I say squeaky
Right.
wheel because I think that that's, I like to just put it out there. I'm not gonna hold back on a question if I have a question on something, because it doesn't do me any good not to know the answer or not to know other perspectives. So, the squeaky wheel usually ends up finding some sort of answer, or at least you have options at that point. And ultimately, it comes
Sure.
down to being curious. Like, I think that's a huge part of what a lot of, I will call, retailers and or just people in general in the flooring industry, in tile, in any, if you can just be a little bit more curious, if you can ask a couple more questions, especially if you're a salesperson, ask more questions, dig a little deeper, peel back that onion, like find out a little bit more. If it's a sales manager to your sales team, ask more questions, find out more about your people. You will come
Right.
out better for knowing more and asking more questions versus the opposite. If you stop at two questions, you get really like succinct answers. I mean, I always hear Michelle saying like, she'll be like, okay, why? Or okay, then what? Like she'll keep digging and digging. And I love that.
Right. And I think that, just in my early career, especially in the lighting industry, one of the things that I loved, and I worked on the sales floor actually in downtown Chicago, is for me, it was all about knowing my product. So, for instance, there was a light fixture that was, it was from Hubbardton Forge actually, and it was all about the cityscape, and it was all of this metal that like outlined the city. And so when people would come in, it was never for me, I was never a salesy person. I was
Mhm.
always about building that relationship and asking questions like, oh, where are you from? Are you visiting? Are you this? Are you that? And so for me,
Absolutely.
it was this whole storytelling. Every fixture I could tell the story about. And so if I knew that they were from, the city, or they were an urban, or they loved, just something about them was edgy, that was always the fixture that I would push them to, because I
Yeah.
could be relatable to that person, not be too salesy, but it was that relationship and connection that always sold. So
Oh, totally.
that's my jam. But at least just asking
Mhm.
those questions, I think with anything is so important, because
Mhm.
people really know when you're being authentic. I mean, at least for me, I can tell when someone's being truly authentic. Even the short time that I did, work in the corporate world, you guys know that I am an HR nightmare, so I just stay in my lane of what I'm supposed to be doing. But exactly what you're talking about, tell me more about strategies for navigating like corporate culture and breaking those glass ceilings. I laugh all the time and say I'm unemployable, I'm an HR nightmare, but for me, truly, I was. I broke so many glass ceilings. There was there was no more going back. So I appreciate someone like you who is in that corporate setting So tell me more about corporate culture and breaking ceilings.
Yeah, that's probably been one of the bigger challenges of going from like a retail showroom to working for a big company like Broadloom. And we're 100% remote also. So like that puts
Oh,
another
wow.
layer of complexity onto things. So the communication is like so crucial. One of the things that I've found that was really helpful is just like if you're talking with other departments and if you're talking with other people, it's like, what are your goals in your department and how can I help move us towards that? Because we all are interconnected, of course, but how do we get to
Right.
those individual goals and then the department goals? Obviously I know what my goals are, but like we talk with other departments that are connected to us, and it's really just figuring out, like, again, asking the questions like, how can I help your department be better? What can I learn? That's a huge part of it too, is just like learning more and putting myself out there, like, hey, you want me to do a presentation at this, boot camp? I'm happy to, like, and then I have to freak out and be like, oh my gosh, what am I going to talk about? So it's, I think it's putting yourself out there, asking questions. It's really, I don't think I've really broken through any glass ceilings yet, but I would say to be in my position, I have a very good overview of my past in the flooring industry. So that helps me in my position where somebody else coming in would not have that connection to the retailer. They haven't walked in those shoes. So that gives me, I think, a little bit of an edge, but I love my retailers. I mean, I fight for them all the time and I want them to do the best. And sometimes I have to be like, hey, corporate is great, but we have to talk about these individual people and these individual retail locations. They're mom and pop shops. They're not us. They're not, they don't have
Right.
hundreds of employees. So you just have to change your perspective a little bit too.
So let's role play for a minute. So let's say I'm a part of, well, I am, but let's say I'm a member of WOFB and I
Mhm.
own a mom and pop tile showroom and I'm in a small town and we're struggling. We cannot get sales or closing sales.
Mhm.
How can the WOFB and what you offer through Broadloom, what is something or advice or an approach that you would take with me? Go.
Yeah. So Cameron, number one, if we're talking about Broadloom, we can offer a fantastic website, which will house a catalog of amazing products. We can, customize that to your location. So then you
Okay.
are seen on the World Wide Web. Like then you're able to be searched. So number one, having a great website. We also have a ton of tools, which I won't get into that. We could do that on a separate meeting. But the
For sure.
WOFB is a great community that, number one, we can help with mentoring. We can also help with group coaching options. And we also can do one-on-one coaching if that's something that you choose. So there are great groups. Monday, we have a free group every Monday that is going to be going through the end of summer here, that we have Monday morning at 7:30 a.m. Central, which I know is very early for our West Coasters. But
Right.
it is a great time to start your week. It's a momentum call. It's 30 minutes. And then if you choose that you want to be more involved in other group coaching, we can do that as well. That's a paid membership, but dang, it's really good to get in with other women that are focused on growing your business and just being the great person that you can, including like building sales and giving great sales ideas and prospecting and those hot topics that we're all talking about to get more customers.
That's right. And so WOFB is where it's at. And so I'm sold, Rachel. You did a great job. Thank you. And those of
Yes.
you who are truly looking for that support, womenofflooring.com is go to it, check it out. Like Rachel said, those meetings are really fun. And, even though it's early, it's a great way to start your Monday morning. There's some really good energy that are on those calls. So,
Absolutely.
since we talked a little bit about challenges through my role play there, can you talk a little bit about challenges, resiliencies, failures, or setbacks, lessons that you've learned through all of the last 15 years and of what have led you to now?
Yeah, I would say like failures in general, I don't like to focus on that too much. I like to call them more lessons. And I because I haven't been an owner of a business, and I have all the respect in the world for everybody that's been an owner, but I have a very like owner mentality. I would say the biggest challenges that I've had that I would call failures are probably like not taking the opportunity to meet somebody, go to something, attend a conference, things like that. Those are places where I feel like I could have gotten further in my career, in my position, faster if I would have taken some of those opportunities or seeked them out. So, like going back to
Oh,
our whole
right.
rejection challenge that we've had recently, asking for something is so important. Whether you think your boss is going to like give you the thumbs down, no, you can't do this, like ask. I mean, really, where are you worse off if you ask? Those are
Right.
big things that I feel could have been, maybe a little bit different in my career. But I think like the biggest failures that I would say is just not speaking up when I saw something that wasn't right in our culture, and then it like kind of festered and it got worse. Those types of
Mm,
situations, which then of course ultimately probably turned into a dismissal of that person, it could have been cut off a lot sooner, or maybe it could have changed in their position perhaps. So
right.
not speaking up is also not the greatest thing. When you see something, say something. Or at least, I didn't take note on a lot of things when I was noticing them on my sales teams. But documenting everything as a sales manager is super, super important. And that doesn't
Right.
mean just bad. That means bad and good. That means positive and opportunities. All of those things I learned along the way. And as the years progressed, I felt like as I was getting towards, the 7th year that I was in my last position, I was like, okay, I kind of got this down, but also like if I had to do it over again, I'm sure I would do it differently. So
Right.
having those things documented, but ultimately ask for what you want. Don't hold back on having the hard conversations, and like really, asking questions and digging deeper into the people that are around you would be, you know, the places where I feel like there was more opportunities that I could have taken.
Right. So through those lessons and the way that you mentor and support women through our community of the WOFB, do you find yourself really leaning into women asking those questions? Like, what is something that's really important for you based on those lessons that you learned? So you probably have a protocol of maybe something that you use to mentor. Is that one of
Mhm.
your like protocols or things that are on your list? Is, hey, make sure you're asking those hard questions based on what you've learned?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that it's a protocol, but it just opens so many more doors by asking more questions. And a
Mhm.
lot of times people will like throw out a question to me, and this is like men, women, everything in between. They'll just send me a Facebook message and it'll ask a question. And I usually start by saying, like, what are you doing now? Like, tell me about what
Right.
the current situation is, because I can't just be like, well, do this. That just would be silly. That would be like a doctor diagnosing somebody without having any examination. So like, let's get into the examination and let's start digging a little bit. And they get uncomfortable, of course. And it's like, all right, now it's time to get into the dirty stuff. Like, let's talk about what's really going on.
Yes,
And
I love that.
it's really figuring out what's the current status, where do you want to be, and then let's figure out the path in between now and there. And the speed of which that happens is really up to the individual and how much they're willing to like put some things on the line. But it's always possible. They just have to really commit to making a change. And change is hard. Change is uncomfortable. But what happens out of change? That's where all the great things happen. Like a little struggle. On the other side of that struggle is always where the good stuff happens. So I think we have to like see that good stuff in our view before we really like dig into all the, the solutions or the, there's no silver bullets. That's the whole thing. There's no silver bullets.
And that's something that's really interesting too. I know that, there are a lot of women through the WOFB that are entrepreneurs, but some that are not. And I think like as an entrepreneur, I've been a serial entrepreneur my whole life. And so change for me is like every single day. Like I love to transition. I love to evolve. I love to pivot. I love to have that change piece like almost every day. And, sometimes that's a blessing and a curse because change, there's so much that is evolving, but to be comfortable with that, that's where I think that sickness as an entrepreneur comes in because it's constant. Like we never know, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so we always have to be ready. So I love that, that you do talk about embracing change really, because you have to, you have to embrace that change.
It's so funny because you're like, you want to have the systems and processes, which then are like consistent, but you also want to be innovative and you want to have, because you're always like ideas. I know that about you and about most entrepreneurs. It's like all those ideas are always happening. So you have to like find that fine balance. And I think that's where like systems and processes get really, really sticky for people. And they get stuck because they're like, well, if we're going to change, how do we have this stuff in place? And I'm like, that's a living document. That's something that's always going to be evolving. And I think that's the biggest thing when people get into their businesses is like, have the systems and processes, but you always have to be looking at them and figuring out where you're going to change them as you pivot and as you get more, where you turn.
Right. And, those systems and processes as an entrepreneur, I know this about from owning a yoga studio to manufacturing ink caps in the tattoo industry. Across the board, systems in place at least work for me. And it comes down to what is my system? So creating one, having that consistency within that system, but just knowing that I can tweak and change with whatever I do. But for every single business that I've ever had, I do have a beautiful system that's in play. I just implement it with every single business and make those tweaks and changes.
Yeah. I mean, and truly. It's not easy. It's not easy. No. It's okay that it's not easy, but it's like having that will make you more successful. Not having that will definitely hinder you.
Right.
So there you go.
And I tell people that all the time, even, learning a manufacturing process from start to finish and learning about packaging and learning about all of these things is it goes back to that exact same thing as being able to change, being able to pivot, being able to be open to new ideas and implementing that where that scales that business. I mean, truly, I love that book, Scale or Fail. So,
well, and speaking like knowing what happens in the beginning and like knowing the entire process, like knowing installation will help you in the sales part. Like knowing sales will help the installation part. Like all of that all connects. And I know on all different ends of it, it feels like, well, I'm just the salesperson or I'm just this. It's like, no, this all works together. You got to look at that consumer journey from like when they first arrive to you all the way through to the end and past the actual installation. That consumer journey is important.
Oh my gosh, so important. So speaking of, I brought up the book, Scale or Fail. And I know like through the WOFB right now, we do have that book club that is going on, which Rejection Proof was one that we just finished. I'm like such a jerk. I feel so bad. I finished Rejection Proof in like 2 days, like 2 months ago.
I
and was
sent
like,
it to you.
You sent that book to me. I know. Never send me anything too early beforehand because I just jump in, read. I was done, like I said, 2 days and then had moved on to something else.
I had to reread it. I mean, I'm the same way as you. I had to reread it.
And you're so sweet because then I got your vitamins that you mailed accidentally through Amazon, which I still have those too. So I owe you a book and a bottle of vitamins.
You're fine. It's our little joke.
Yeah, right. What is another favorite book and that you've recently read?
One of my favorite books that I would say on a team, let me list two. Okay. Favorite
Okay.
book of like almost all time is They Ask, You Answer. It's by
Ooh.
Marcus Sheridan. It just basically speaks to how do you get people to trust you as a business? You answer the questions that people are asking. Like it's as basic as that, and you create content around it. That is like search engine optimization at its very, very basic. And Marcus Sheridan does a really great job of like walking through his experience in the pool industry. And he also has a podcast, and he also has he's on LinkedIn, and he's like super, super high energy. And I've seen him speak on stage, and he's really good. So that's a really good one. The other one I really liked is The 6 Types of Working Genius by Patrick Lencioni. That's a more recent book. And that one talks about like, what are the things that you like set you on fire, like get you really excited and you could do for hours at a time, never lose steam, blah, blah, blah. And then there's things that you can do, but eventually, you're going to lose steam doing them. And then what are the things that are your like bottom, like just suck the life out of you things. And it goes through all these 6 different types of working genius. Every company needs a balance of them. And it just it's really, he lays it out simply, and you can actually take an assessment for like $25 to figure out what your working genius is and your bottom 2 working frustrations is what they call them. So I love that book.
Share that link with me, would you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll put it in the group because I think if you're a business owner, it's really important. But just as a person, like it's kind of like taking a DISC assessment, but this gives you more insight into like your top 2 and your bottom 2, and like how do you work with other people to fill in the gaps?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that so much. Well, Rachel, I hope to hear more from you on this podcast. I hope to have you on at least quarterly. My goodness, you're such an amazing
anytime you need me.
ally, an asset for women of the flooring business. So I am so honored that you spent this beautiful morning with me here, even though I'm in downtown New York and the sun beaming in, and I'm not naked, but this has been a good one.
I love it. I find talking with you, Cameron, it is like a ray of sunshine for me. And starting out my morning with you on this beautiful day is like, it's just going to set the rest of my day off to like a great start. So thank you.
Aww. Well, I'm so happy that you could join me. I look forward to doing more fun endeavors with you and
seeing you in person.
I'm sure to share those. Yes, in person for sure. I don't know when that's going to be next, but I'm sure it will be at a trade show or who knows. Maybe we'll put together something before then.
Yes, would love it.
Well, thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to chatting with you again soon.
You got it. Bye, Cameron.
Bye. Okay, everyone, for those of you that are looking for the WOFB community, we are women that are in flooring, tile, stone, designers, entrepreneur, women in lighting like myself, and so much more who are passionate about personal and professional growth. And as you know, through this podcast, I aim to amplify the voices of women like Rachel, women like Michelle, women like Angie, women like myself in our fields, and to empower each other to flourish in business and in life. Also, for those of you that are looking for a CEU for your showroom, or a CEU if you're a designer or an architect, please check out CameoStudioDesigns.com, where I offer the CEU Designer Dopamine. Designer Dopamine is worth 1 credit, and you can use that all the time. So check it out, please. Also, Broadloom. Oh, I meant to ask Rachel, but I will go ahead and connect this here. Broadloom, you can find, I believe it's Broadloom. Rachel, give me a thumbs up. Broadloom.com. Perfect. She's still backstage, guys. So Broadloom.com. And also, you guys, Latacrete. If you are not using Latacrete for your commercial or for your residential jobs, you are so missing out. As Latacrete is one of my favorite companies that I've always used as a contractor, as a tile expert, or who hires those tile experts. We are so excited that that brand for us, it's synonymous with quality and innovation for Latacrete. We love, love, love. So be sure to check out Latacrete.com. Let me just show that here for you. There you go. Latacrete.com for all of you that are looking for those commercial or residential products. Also, if you're interested in becoming a sponsor for WOFB, email podcast@womenflooring.com for sponsorship information. Over the next few weeks, I get to unpack some really fun stuff. So I'm meeting with Georgia Ezra, who is the creative director from Tile Ezra from Australia. I'm also chatting with Leslie Godden, who is the journalist and author of Artisan Magazine, which is super exciting. So be sure to log on, join me every Monday as I release new episodes, and be a part of the conversation, ladies, through Facebook groups like WOFB. Be a part of our book club, which I think that you're going to love. So live from New York, I am out of here. It was so exciting to be with Rachel and so exciting to do this podcast today from the 22nd floor in downtown Manhattan. So bye, guys. Hi, Rachel. Can you hear me?